welcome to a special episode of Brazil Crypto Report coming to you from Merge Buenos Aires here in the Argentine capital. I'm your host, Aaron Stanley, and we're going to be doing some interviews on the floor here throughout the day. Really exciting conference, a lot going on here. A really great group of folks from Brazil, Argentina, from El Salvador, from Europe, from North America. Really a fun convergence here of people in Buenos Aires this week. So really excited to be here. So right now I have a really special guest here. I have Bruno Grossi, who is the head of emerging technologies and digital assets at Banco Inter. Bruno, thanks for being here.
It's great to be here, Aaron. I have more than 25 years in technology, working more in innovation technology, right? And I'm involved with blockchain for since 2017. When I started to invest in crypto and trying to understand blockchain, right? At the Inter, I've been at the Inter for the last 4 years, working with innovation at the Inter in the emerging technology area. We start to work with blockchain at the Inter with Drex 2 years ago, right? Inter was the first digital bank in Brazil. We are one of the most innovative digital bank in the country. We was the first bank moving to the cloud, and the first one that created a super app in the bank. Today we have more than 80 products, non-financial products at our app. And we are always trying to innovate, I think that the blockchain is the most innovative technology today for the financial ecosystem, right? It's not something to the future. It's in the present, right? It's already changing the financial ecosystem, not only because of the CBDC projects like Drex in the other countries, but we have stable coins that is increasing their rules, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of things. So that's why we created this team focused in digital assets areas in the bank, in the Banco Inter.
Let's maybe talk more about, I really want to learn more about Banco Inter itself, okay. Right? So you guys have been, like you said, you're the first digital bank in Brazil. Yeah. And obviously in Brazil, there's lots of digital banks now, yeah, but yeah. Like you were one of the first or the first. And maybe talk more about how this bank came to, what was the origin story for this bank, right? And then how has this maybe started this wave of digital bank innovation in Brazil specifically?
Interbank started as a financial institution, right? It's called Intermedium, back in 1944, I think. It was created to give credit for mortgage solution, right? For a company is part of the group, that's MRV. It's a constructor company at Belo Horizonte, right?
Okay.
This institution, financial institution, was created to give mortgage solution for the clients of this company. Back in 2005, they decided to become a bank, and they get the license that's necessary to be a bank a full bank in Brazil, right? But it is a small bank. It's a small local bank. So the guys at that time think how we can increase our get clients out of the Brazil without opening a lot of branches in a lot of cities, right?
Right.
That's why they decided to talk with the central bank to find a solution to not have this branch in each cities and open the account without going to an agency, right?
Right.
going to a physical agency. So they convinced the central bank to authorize the opening of the account without a physical document, right? At that time, you could open your account, only take a picture of a document and some physical paper where you can sign a physical sign and send by email to the bank, and you open your account, receive the card in your house. That's the beginning of the digital bank era in Brazil, right?
Wow. So that was 2005 then. So that was before Nubank. That was before. I mean,
Exactly.
Brazil's full of digital banks and fintech platforms now, but this was back before any of that was even existed, right? So, and then as a digital bank, right? You're competing against the big players, right? The Itaús and the Bradescos and all these big guys, and you have to offer all these innovative products, right? Like different types of products, services. It's not just easier. Maybe it's easier to use, but it's also there's new types of things that you can offer that maybe a large bank can't offer so easily. So maybe talk about like maybe we can tie in the digital assets angle into this as well. But maybe talk a bit about how you have or Banco Inter has been trying to expand the portfolio of products and services that it offers in this digital bank format over the years.
That's a good question. In 2018, the bank decided to go ahead, and create non-financial product that can be integrated with the bank account, right? And create the first marketplace of products that is integrated in the app of a digital bank, right? Creating the idea of super app in Brazil. It's an idea that they already have in China and some Asia countries, and they see this is the future, and created this marketplace integrated. And the main goal is to facilitate the buying some products without needing to put your credit card number in another website, right? So we've integrated the marketplace of products. You can use your account and your credit card that you already have in your bank account.
So the idea with these super apps would be, it's like, okay, I not only have a app where I can check my bank account, I can send a Pix payment, but I could call an Uber, or I could order iFood, or
you can buy some products. You can buy food. You can get a phone line, right? We have Intercell, that was the first bank with like
a mobile phone line, right?
Mobile phone line.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything integrated in one super app, right?
Amazing.
That's the idea.
No, that's super interesting. And then maybe talk a bit about the digital assets piece of this. Like, what was the conversation around? How should we? Do we want to integrate digital assets into this? Like, do we want to have a digital assets blockchain strategy? Like, how did that conversation happen?
We think that the digital assets is the future of the financial ecosystem, right? To integrate not only between the banks, but to tokenize real world assets and to connect with another account, right? Inter wants to be global, a global company. We are increasing in Florida just now, and we are coming to Argentina too.
Oh wow!
But we want to be a global super app, right? Where we can travel all around the world and use only one account to that, right? Nowadays we have account in dollar, and sometimes we have in pesos too. But digital assets is an important component to become this global integrated ecosystem, right? Like the BIS told in some papers about the Finternet, right? The Finternet is a kind of internet for financial, the BIS, you know, right?
Yeah,
It's
well,
the-
Bank of International Settlements.
yeah,
right?
yeah. The BIS is talking about the Finternet. This is the opportunity to integrate a lot of financial ecosystems, different ecosystems using blockchain.
Mm.
So that's why we think that the digital asset and blockchain it's like migrating to the cloud, right? Before.
Right, right.
It's important to every bank to be in the blockchain ecosystem, and we are creating this digital assets area just to be integrated in this. We are looking for a lot of solutions in tokenization, but also in stablecoin, using stablecoin to remittance
Yeah.
and cross-border payment, right? But we need to understand better which is the killer use case, right?
Yeah.
I think the stablecoin is the biggest one just now, but we think that trade finance, for example, will be very helpful to use blockchain and digital assets solution, right?
Yeah, and let's dive into that a little bit more because I know in the Drex pilot, your consortium, this was the main use case that you're focusing on, that and the credit card receivables, right?
Mm-hmm.
So trade finance and the credit card receivables.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe before we even get into that, I'd like to just ask you your thoughts on the first phase of the Drex project, the first phase of the pilot, I should say, which wrapped up. There's just a report that was put out recently, and I'd love to maybe just get some color on like what was that like being a part of this,
Mm-hmm.
and just everything from spinning up nodes and getting connected and getting kind of plugged in and running the test transactions, and I think you were tokenizing government bonds, right? Was the kind of the first step just to see, does this actually work, right? But I would love to get your some color from you on just what this process was like as a participant, in a consortium participant.
The main idea of Drex is to use a EVM compatible blockchain, right, to the financial ecosystem, right? We have a lot of blockchain solutions that's not EVM compatible, but the central bank decided to use Hyperledger Bezel. That is a EVM compatible blockchain solution, right? So the idea is to have, it's very different from another countries. Most of them use a private blockchain inside the central bank network, giving access to the banks through the API, some normal API.
Mm-hmm.
The Brazilian Central Bank has a revolutionary solution that is to put a node, one node of Drex in each bank, participant bank, right? It's very, very different because it's really decentralized, a decentralized network. For example, if you have the central bank being disconnected from the internet, the banks can continue to transact between them.
Oh,
right?
interesting.
This is very important for the Brazilian central bank, and very, very different from other countries. So in the first phase, the main point was to connect these nodes from each bank using the RSFN. That's a network for the financial system that you have, and each bank has a node running in its own cloud, right? But connected with each one
Okay.
on using this financial network. Okay, that's the main point in the first phase, to put this connect this decentralized blockchain network using this financial network, national financial network, right? It was a very interesting thing that we can do to create this based on the central bank instructions, right? And then we started with a simple use case that was the DVP, or delivery vs payment of tokenized public bonds, right? So I can it's not possible in Brazil today that to sell your public, if you have a public bond, you can't sell it to another person. It's
Okay.
only feasible to do to sell to your bank, right? But not in our bank. Using Drex in this pilot, we could sell a peer-to-peer selling, peer-to-peer negotiation of public bonds using Drex. It's different from anything that we have today.
So it says like I could sell mine to you.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like I don't need to sell mine back to Banco Inter, and then Banco Inter sells it to you. Like I could sell mine directly to you.
Exactly. It's what called DVP, right? The delivery vest payment. I put you put your tokenized public bond in a smart contract, and I put my money, my real digital, in the smart contract. It can send you the money if everything's the conditions are matched. They send you the money and get me the tokenized bond, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like it's a technological like escrow system essentially, right?
Exactly.
Where it's like, okay, you put the money in, I'll put the bond in. Once all the commissions are met, the swap happens.
Everything in a smart contract. Right?
Yeah.
It's a revolutionary tool, because it's not possible to do today using the legacy ecosystem, right?
It's super interesting.
And it proves that Drex can create new products for the financial ecosystem.
No, that's amazing. And then now that we're in phase 2 of the pilot, there's some new use cases that are being tested, which you guys are involved in. So there's the trade finance, and there's credit card receivables. I think there's 13 total use cases, but you're focusing on these 2. Yeah. Maybe talk a bit about, or maybe describe each of these use cases and what exactly are you doing with each of these?
We are selected for 3 use cases, right? A liquidity pool of tokenized public bonds, but it's a project that the liquidity pool is something that exists in DeFi ecosystem, right? But it not exists in our regulated financial system, right? It's a product that we can test, and we want to test it, but I think it will not be a real product, right? In the future. That's why we are not focused on that use case for now. We are implementing it, we are testing it, but it's not something that I think it will be a real product in the near future, right? But we have the other 2 use cases. One of that is the credit card receivable tokenization, the tokenization of a credit card receivable. This use case is, I don't know if you know, but if someone has receive a credit card payment, it will only receive the money 30 days or 6 days before after you pay it, right?
Oh, okay. So if I come to your store, I pay with a credit card. Yeah. You receive the money 30
only
days
30
later.
days or 60 days.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So if I have a store and I want to get this money before this date, I need to put my receivable. This is a receivable, right? I will receive the money sometime in the future. So I go to the bank, offer to the bank this receivable, and get the money with some tax or some discount in this value, right? That's what happens today. With a tokenized receivable, we want to improve this ecosystem where the bank can give not money to the seller, but give some tokens, for example, right? Have a lower interest rate, for example,
right?
To give your tokens and not money, because I not put put the bank's money in your account, only the token. So you can use this token to buy your supply or something that you need to buy, right? Because it represents a receivable that the bank will pay for the money sometime in the future. Right?
Yeah.
It's important to everyone because it will lower the interest rate that's involved in this receivable use case, right? It's not a new product, but it's a new
Well, it's
how do I say?
improving an existing like this type of financing, this type of product already exists, but it's very prohibitively. There's a lot of friction, right?
Exactly.
It's the interest rates are high. It's different. There's not that many banks that want to provide these types of loans. To obtain a loan like this, you probably need a very high. You need a very good reputation. You need to meet a lot of requirements. And I think in a country like Brazil, where credit is very, especially now with interest rates up to the Selic rate is now at 14.5%.
Exactly.
So credit, financing for these types of things is very expensive, right? So that obviously traps. I think we call it working capital is what we call it in English, right? Where it's you have to be able to. You haven't received the money yet. It's a liability. It's coming to you, but you haven't received it yet.
Yeah.
But you still have bills to pay. Like my money's coming in 30 days, but I have a bill I have to pay tomorrow. Right, I have pagas contas, right? Like tomorrow, not 30 days from now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I need money in that short-term window. I need to take out a quick loan to be able to pay my employees, pay my suppliers, pay my phone bill, whatever. And these types of solutions will allow, I can take this receivable and I can tokenize that. I can use that token to basically access credit in a much quicker, easier, cheaper way than under the current system, essentially. And then in an economy like Brazil, where there's just a lot of the credit markets are just very kind of trapped at the moment, that could have a very big impact on a small business or whomever, right? To free up these types of capital for small businesses in the country could have a very big. There's a lot of positive impacts that could happen from that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a super exciting. And then on the trade finance side, I think it's kind of similar, right? It's a similar, but it's a bit more. More. There's more international players involved and more counterparties, perhaps.
We have a lot of gaps in the trade finance, right? We have a lot of intermediaries. We have a lot of bureaucracy, and a lot of paper involved in a trade finance. In the supply chain of a trade finance, right? So it's important to create more trust between the participants of this the supply chain, creating more trust between them, and reducing the interest rate to everyone, and it's important to give access, and reducing this interest rate. We can give more access to small and medium farmers, producers, to export their products to another country, right? That's why I think it's one of the most important use cases for Drex to connect. We are trying to connect Drex with another CBDC and use this CBDC to create more liquidity between the seller and the buyer and all of the intermediaries in the middle of the supply chain, right?
Yeah.
Like the shipment and the transport and everyone, right?
Yeah, and I know you and João from Microsoft were in Hong Kong a couple months ago, speaking at the Chainlink conference, talking about this very use case.
Exactly.
And I know there's a kind of a partnership with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the Brazilian Central Bank to explore some things in this area. So I was hoping you could maybe talk a bit about how does maybe Chainlink and Chainlink CCIP fit into this, and how does all this? Who are all the players involved in kind of making this happen? How does that work?
Good. I think I know that it will not exist only one blockchain to solve everything, right? Also in a local solution or in a global solution, right? That's why it's important to use some technology to integrate these systems and these blockchains and the off-chain data and the on-chain data. So that's why we invited Chainlink to this use case, right? João and me created this use case some time ago, And then we invited Chainlink to integrate this because the integration is the most important part for this. Because
But
there is a lot of...
Joel was right here taking pictures of us as
Oh,
we're
yeah.
talking about it. So.
You know.
Perfect timing. Yeah.
There is a lot of solutions to create a blockchain and to create a CBDC, right? Some of them are using APIs, and some are using Hyperledger Fabric, Corda, and the Hyperledger Bezier, for example. And Chainlink has a solution to integrate everything, and they help us to solve the liquidity problem between create a confident liquidity solution for integrate different blockchains, right?
Yeah.
We need to create a blockchain for the trade finance because not all trade finance documents, trade finance negotiation will happen in a CBDC, right? CBDC will be for liquidity and to create trust and create solve some regulatory problems, but not for trade finance, right? So we use Chainlink solution to integrate Drex with this trade finance blockchain, integrate this with another CBDC, and integrate and create liquidity solution between different CBDC, right?
Yeah.
And in the future we can integrate it with stablecoin solution too.
Interesting. Right? Interesting. That's
and
you touched on this a little bit before, but now that you're focusing on Drex, but you've also been studying a lot of some other CBDC models that other countries have been deploying, other banks have been deploying. I'd like for you to maybe, from your perspective of having worked on inside Drex now, like what do you think about makes this really a unique project, globally speaking? Like what makes this like a really like something that's maybe like novel that like nobody else has really come up with yet?
Drex, about Drex?
Yeah.
Drex is very innovative because it's in my point of view, it's the only solution that is really decentralized, right? When we talk about decentralization, we think about a lot of people think about being not permissioned, a blockchain not permissioned, but it's a permissioned blockchain running and governed by the central bank, but it works without central bank, right? Because the financial institution will be connected also if the central bank is not in the network, right? This is very, very revolutionary because, and the idea is most of the CBDC are focused on instant payment, but we already have PIX that is a successful a successful project, right? Global successful project from the Central Bank of Brazil, and in Drex, they are focused on the trilemma of programmability that will create new products for the financial ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right. The decentralization and the privacy. Right. The first case we could prove decentralization works and the programmability works, but now we need to focus more on privacy problem. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the Drex trilemma, right?
The Drex trilemma.
Yeah. The privacy. The decentralization, privacy, and programmability. So trying to figure out. So phase one was really focusing of the Drex pilot was really focusing on the privacy element to try and define some of these solutions.
Yeah.
And then it seems like we're getting pretty close to figuring that out. But then once you get that figured out, you have to work on, how do we get this to however many TPS that you need, like 10,000 TPS or whatever number you need to run this thing, right? And then also figuring out how do you ensure the programmability that which is really sort of the killer use case of this technology, right? Is having the ability to have programmable money, and that's what unlocks things like the DVP and these types of things. Maybe I know you focus on some other things at Banco Inter aside from just blockchain, so maybe we can touch on what are you focusing on the artificial intelligence front right now. I know you're doing some work on like quantum computing and things of that nature as well. I would love to talk a bit about that. What are you working on there?
At Emerging Technology, we are focused not only on blockchain and digital assets, but we are focused on other technology at the edge of the technology, right? like in artificial intelligence, but not the commodity of artificial intelligence, not accessing OpenAI LLM to use it at the bank, because we are using it, but at Emerging Technology we are focused on what's next, right? What the artificial intelligence will be in 5 years, for example, or 3 or 5 years. And we are also looking for quantum computing, right? I'm fully convinced that quantum computing will impact the financial systems in the next 5 years. We are also looking for talking with big techs like Google, IBM, AWS, Microsoft. All of them are creating supercomputers based on quantum computing solution, right? 2 or 3 weeks ago, Microsoft and the AWS launched their quantum chip to do that. And the quantum computing is a very interesting area because it's very different from AI, for example.
Okay.
Right? Like Ana Paula from IBM told me sometime, everyone already talked with some AI sometime in the past. So when the ChatGPT was become public, right? Everyone already have some experience with AI sometime in the past, right?
Yeah.
But for the quantum computing, it's not true, right? We don't have a lot of people looking for this, and this is a very different kind of computing. We need to rethink everything. We need to create new algorithms to a quantum computer. It's not get some algorithm that already exists today and they put it in a supercomputer, right?
Yeah.
It's a very different, because it's a different paradigm of computing, using quantum particles and quantum, I don't know the quantum terms, but for example, we don't have
qubits, right?
Qubits,
is the name of it, yeah.
but the qubits don't have only 0 and 1 like the classical computer, right? It have a lot of states between 0 and 1.
It could be 0 or 1, depending.
Or
it could
or
be
the
0
same-
now, or it could be 1 now, or it
Yeah.
could be somewhere in between.
And
or-
be the both in the same time, right?
yeah.
It's a very different. It's changed everything for us, for the world, right?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you have. I feel like the last couple of months there's been a lot of kind of like quantum computing doomerism like floating around. Where
Yeah.
people are like, oh no, quantum computing's coming. It's gonna destroy all of our algorithms that encrypt. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the big threats is that it could basically unencrypt algorithms that secure, the Bitcoin blockchain, or the national, the nuclear codes, or whatever it might be, or bank secrets, or whatever. So there's a lot of people thinking, when they think about quantum computing, they think of like, oh, it's this thing that's going to come and like it's gonna, it's like it's gonna expose everything that we thought was secret, right? But and there's a lot of work going into how to protect systems and make them quantum resistant and whatnot. But like, I would love your thoughts on, maybe flipping that. Like, what are some of the maybe positive like use cases, or like why should we be like optimistic about quantum computing? Like, what benefits will this bring to us?
With quantum computing, we will have access to manage more data than ever, right? Than ever before. Also using the supercomputing that the Amazon and Microsoft are creating, or NVIDIA, right? So I think we can have, we will break this security, right? But we already have some solution from NIST. For example, we have some quantum resistance algorithm, right? Me and João already worked in a paper about using quantum resistance cryptography for DREX, for example.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's possible. It's feasible to solve this. You changing the algorithms to signature and to cryptograph, right? So I think it's something that we need to do and change our algorithms just now, but it has some solution to solve this in the future, right? The good point is that we will have access to a lot of data, more data than ever,
Okay.
and you can create more. For example, we can improve our credit risk analysis, right? For example, we can optimize our portfolio, our portfolio algorithms to assets, and we will check more. We will have access to new products. There is some companies that's already using quantum compute to create new types of drugs, that's more effective for solving some issues, right? So I think that it will be good to us to have access to new products, new drugs, new portfolio optimization, new credit risk analysis, and give clients more personalized solution than ever, right?
Yeah.
At the bank, we are looking for creating a huge personalized super app, for example. And the AI will be very impacted by the quantum computing too, because it's a lot of data to access and to create a LLM, for example. Nowadays, we will create more effective AI in the future, right? So it will improve the personalization, it will improve the understanding of the client, I think it will be a lot of new use case to solve with quantum compute.
Yeah,
that's why we need to start study it now. And one important part that we are doing now, we just created a partnership with the Federal University of Minas Gerais to study quantum computing and to create a generation of computer guys that understand quantum compute, right?
Okay.
It's important to form people to this new paradigm.
Yeah, and this stuff is pretty complicated too, right? So it's like, if you thought blockchain was complicated, just wait till you get quantum computing, right?
Exactly.
Even more so, right? But no, it's super interesting, and it's worth having these conversations like this because these technologies don't exist in isolation, right? It's not like, okay, you have blockchain here and you have AI here and you have quantum computing here. It's like I mean, maybe right now they all kind of exist independently, but eventually they're all going to sort of bleed together in some form, right? And I think, to your point about how the world's producing like just exponentially more data every year, every day, every month, and to run these applications that to provide like very like personalized services and products for people, like you're gonna need even more powerful compute algorithms and services to be able to render all this data, process this data, analyze the data, and provide services that are very like hyper personalized, right? So as we have more data, we need more compute. We need more. You can either get more compute or you can get more powerful compute, right? And that's an interesting way. I think like how does quantum computing, like why should I be excited about this, right? Because it's going to unlock like a lot of new products that we could potentially come to market that there's just not enough. Like compute is a finite resource, right? It doesn't. There's not just like infinite amounts of compute like just floating around out there, right? So if you can improve the quality and the power of that compute, you can do sort of exponentially more things with that compute power essentially. So I'd love to maybe just turn it back to you as we wrap up here for anything that you're like really excited about the rest of this year of 2025. It could be like on the Drex front, it could be on other things you're working on at Banco Inter. But any other kind of final thoughts you want to leave the audience with, or any maybe predictions for what we might see over the rest of 2025 in the areas where you work?
We are waiting for the regulatory framework in Brazil, right, to crypto and tokenization. Right, this is something that will happen this year. I think it's important improvement for us in Brazil to work with crypto and to work with tokenization. Something that the central bank and the CVM is working on, and create a public consultants to the market to help them to understand how we can use it. Right, I think it's an important mark of the financial ecosystem in Brazil. This this digital assets regulatory framework. I think that we'll see a lot of new use cases for cross-border payment using stablecoins too.
Okay.
Right? I think it will improve liquidity migrating between countries using stablecoins, and it's important thing to look at because we have now more transactions using stablecoins than using credit card in the world, right? So it's a huge improvement for the ecosystem and to this cross-border movement, right?
Amazing, amazing. Well, Bruno, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. This is super exciting. Glad we got a chance to finally chat and just learn about what you're doing at Banco Inter and really exciting stuff. And appreciate everyone taking the time to watch us today. And we'll be back with some more episodes from Merge Buenos Aires.
Thank you.